for every sovereign citizen who is watching right now, who's like, well, she needs to get her money back from that so-called law school because I'm an independent blah blah blah, and you can do. No, you're not. Stop watching. Stop watching. Stop commenting. I don't care about your internet theories. It's not reality.
So, okay.
Come at me.
That's a spicy take.
We are the Armed Attorneys. Today, we are coming back to you with Mailbag Monday, this time Emily and Edwin version, and this time actually answering one of the questions we advertised last week. Sorry about that, everybody. So stick around. We're actually going to talk about dual citizenship for the purpose of buying firearms in 2 different states. I promise this time. We're going to talk about what is brandishing and what can you do to your Mossberg Shockwave. But before we get started, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting the like button. And Edwin, here we go. Questions.
Sure.
Are you ready?
Right.
All right. So this is from, this was not the only person who commented, so this is just one of you. At Simon Sutherland 15, I came here for only one specific question. I watched it twice. You did not cover it. Maybe you can discuss dual residence in your next video. It would be greatly appreciated. Wow. Edwin wasn't here for that one.
Simon.
So, well, no, but he's not that angry. And like so many people commented that. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. We had that ready to go. Mm-hmm. It was on our piece of paper and somehow we just skipped it last week. So I apologize. When can you buy a firearm in more than one state such that you have dual residency? The answer is only if you're in the military. Right?
Yeah. So what would Richard have answered?
Do you want to pretend to be Richard right now?
If I had
very technical about get very technical.
If I had a beard and nerd glasses.
Nerd glasses. Yeah. So yes, the answer is you and I, even if like I have a vacation home and I spend 50% of my time in that vacation home out of state, am I a resident in both states? No. I got to pick one.
Right. But don't forget, we're not talking about rifles and shotguns.
Correct.
We're only talking about handguns because federal law does contain a special rule with regard to rifles and shotguns that are sold at the FFL's place of business.
Yeah,
so we're not talking about that. Yeah. So if you were all looking forward to putting that in the comments, well, they forgot about that. Well,
gotcha.
We didn't forget. We're talking about handguns.
Yes. So yes, this is just meant for members of the military. If you are in the military and you have a state of residence that you do not want to give up, you can, under some circumstances, still go buy handguns out of state where you are stationed. You need your military ID, you need your PCS, you need your orders, and you should be allowed to, I've never tried it, I've never been in the military. You should, so I say should, having no personal knowledge, be allowed. They will take, there's a special subsection B on your 4473. They should enter all that information, let you buy a gun not in your state of residence.
Yes, so keep in mind that this kind of goes back to also a practical matter in that whenever people purchase firearms, the state issue identification they use the most is a driver's license, and it is not legal for you to have a valid driver's license in 2 different states.
And I did not know that till you told me that. That is news to me, but I've never tried.
Yes. In fact, whenever you go get it, if you are moving or if you are establishing, if you do have a vacation house and you bebop down to your local driver's license office, one of the things that they will definitely ask you is, did you have a license in the state you came from? If you do, please give that to us before we will give you your license from this state.
Interesting. All right, I'm going to read all of these because they're on my phone and Edwin's eyes are falling out of his head. They're held together by toothpicks and chewing gum.
I can't read that at all.
Yeah, okay. All right. I love this one. This is from @Larry S. Ferris. Can you nail down the term brandishing and what actually would constitute guilt of brandishing? As an example, does your pistol have to leave the holster? And this is he is a Texas resident. He gives us an example. We won't go into it at the moment, but we can talk about Texas and we can expand to nationwide. So Edwin, you talk about Texas. In Texas, what is brandishing?
Well, Texas, we don't ever use the word brandishing. And in Texas, here, we use the word exhibiting. And so, whenever you're involved in a situation, did you use or exhibit your weapon? And exhibiting, whenever we first passed open carry many, 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 many years ago, that was a valid concern because prior to
Well, Edwin
that,
was harassing prosecutors at town halls about it.
elected
Yeah.
prosecutors.
Good for you,
Yes,
Edwin.
I know. I relish that. But yeah, because previously, to have a handgun, you were required to keep it concealed. If somebody saw it, could they argue that was exhibiting? Now that everybody can carry unconcealed, as long as it's in a holster, are you still exhibiting while it's in the holster? And fortunately, I think as a practical matter, it's turned out that no, your hand actually has to be on the gun. It pretty much
Yeah.
has to leave the
Which
holster.
would constitute a use, not necessarily an exhibition, I think.
I think it's an
Touching it.
exhibition. I don't
Yeah.
think it's a use.
Well, but all right, I think you're wrong. That's okay.
So, well, what's interesting though is Texas has a very, very, very specific law about about showing a gun in terms of a defensive manner, and that law actually uses the word display
Yes,
instead of exhibit.
I know we're trying to fix that this year, actually.
We would love to fix that
So-
because the Texas legislature, they have hobbled together all of our codes much like a quilt, and in many times the pieces just simply don't match.
No. So, if you are not in the great state of Texas, your codes might actually use the term brandishing, but every state's definition is going to vary about what makes you guilty of brandishing, what it actually means. In most states, it's going to have to be an intentional display.
Yeah, most states that do use the word brandishing have had court cases
Yeah.
that have already interpreted what brandishing means. And so it may mean something slightly different from state to state. But yeah, sort of the common element is what was the intent behind actually pulling the gun or showing the gun. And if the intent was to kind of embolden some sort of fear,
Yeah.
then yeah, they're going to call that brandishing.
Yeah, without justification, right? So, okay, so now we've got at dhunter52171. I asked before, but I don't think it's been on a Monday mailbag video. Has there ever been a case when a defendant has countersued the government seeking monetary damages for violating said defendant's constitutional rights? What do you think, Edwin?
Well, I mean, there's plenty of cases where you've tried to sue the government for violating constitutional rights. However, whenever it comes to, and all of these cases involve some sort of harm, actual physical harm that has been inflicted on an individual, usually by the police or by jailers. And so I don't know if this question is specifically talking about judicial harm, or I was harmed because they put me through the ringer because I was arrested. My case drug on for a year, and they finally dismissed it on the trial. But I don't know if you're going to have a case. I have not seen a case that arises from any kind of harm that the judicial system has inflicted.
Yeah.
Only the law enforcement system.
Right. So, and bear in mind, when you're charged with a crime, that is the state of, or the Commonwealth of, or the United States of America versus your name. You don't get to file a counterclaim in that suit because it is the government bringing criminal action against you. The only thing you're allowed to do is defend yourself. But we do have this mechanism that Edwin was talking about, which is generally a 1983 claim that happens in federal court. That's your suit against the government for whatever damages they may have inflicted upon you. But it is very, very limited. The Fifth Circuit, so if you live in Texas, Louisiana, who else? Oklahoma, Mississippi,
Not Oklahoma.
not Oklahoma. You're out of luck because we have really, really limited what can be brought in 1983. I mean, basically, you gotta get your ass kicked by police in a pretty unmistakable way. And in that case, like, yeah, you recover some money from them, but a lot of it's going to go to your medical bills.
Yeah, it's very interesting that the Fifth Circuit. A lot of people love the Fifth Circuit because
They do good
they are
stuff.
they are very conservative and they come out really well on a lot of the gun stuff. However, as a consequence of their conservative jurisprudence, they have never met a governmental immunity that they didn't like.
Correct. And there's also, you file lawsuits, but you never want to be in this situation where like you've been wrongfully convicted and you've sat in prison unjustifiably for a number of years. We see those lawsuits as well. I hope that no one who's watching ever has to file one of those. That is no good. But generally speaking, no one likes it when Richard and I say this, but the government has the control over the judicial system. The government chooses when we're allowed to sue the government.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just the nature of it. So there are very few times when you get to sue the government. And I will say, Richard's gonna be mad at me for provoking people, but I've got to do it. For every sovereign citizen who is watching right now, who's like, well, she needs to get her money back from that so-called law school because I'm an independent, blah blah blah, and you can do. No, you're not. Stop watching. Stop watching. Stop commenting. I don't care about your internet theories. It's not reality.
So, okay.
Come at me.
That's a spicy take. So I wonder if we're going to see any kind of civil fallout from the man who spent, 18 years in the Harris County Jail before he got his case dismissed?
I don't know because Richard and I actually talked about that. I looked into it. He was non-compos mentis for
I
most of
know.
it. So what are you going to do?
So can a non-compos mentis suffer damages for having your rights abrogated?
But were they? I mean, if he's too crazy to stand trial, he can't just be out and about in the public.
I know. And in
So,
other philosophical statements,
sure.
if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound if there's nobody around to hear it?
All right. So now we have, and our next question. So let's generalize this to all the states, and we can talk about Texas too, because this is meant to be Texas, because we're talking about the Delta Blue Barbecue. This is at Goofy Noodle 4775. How about carrying in restaurants that have a felony warning sign outside? We went to the Delta Blues because the restaurant next door had a sign. So before we talk about Texas, I'll let Edwin talk about that because also he loves the Delta Blue. Um, Generally speaking, in most states where you are sitting right now, there is probably no force of law behind any sign you see at a restaurant because most of the country, it's just a trespass warning and there's no legal consequence until someone actually tells you to get out.
Right, and that's where we see a lot of people confusing the issues. Trespass, with regard to trespass, the most important element of trespass is that you have to be given notice. And so a lot of times, signs, maybe they give notice, maybe they don't give notice. But the one thing that you have to absolutely be aware of all times in all states, if a private property owner, even a piece of private property that's open to the public, like a restaurant, if an individual who is the owner or has the authority of the owner tells you that you cannot carry, then you cannot carry. That every state recognizes that is absolute concrete notice that your continued activity is violating the law.
So, and Texas specifically, you see a blue sign outside the restaurant that says it's a felony to carry in here if you don't have a license. What does that mean, Edwin?
Oh, well, that means that is pretty much unenforceable because we got rid of the blue signs several years ago.
Yes, you see those blue signs. So you could have gone, I'm assuming you wanted to go to the Papa's Seafood. If it was the Delta Blue out here.
I mean, they're owned by the same company.
I know. Well, I don't know why one would have a sign and one not, but I've never paid attention because, again, I'll say this again this episode, come at me, Papa's Brothers. But yes, so I mean, we don't have blue signs no more. I mean,
Yeah.
we have them; they exist, but those signs are completely legally unenforceable.
Yeah, blue signs not enforceable. One day, perhaps, in which just to clarify, blue sign, red sign, those are signs issued by the TABC.
Yes.
So only places that serve alcohol will have either red signs, blue signs. And basically, yeah, blue signs were deemed moot
Yeah.
several legislative sessions ago. But with the thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of places that these signs had been sent to over the years, it's going to take a few generations to finally have people take all those down.
I know it. Okay, 2 quick questions left. This one only you're going to answer because people have heard me yap about it before. In 2 sentences or less, should you give a statement to police after using a firearm in self-defense? You haven't talked to a lawyer. What are you allowed to say?
Well, you definitely should say that you had a fear for your life, death or serious bodily injury.
Don't say it like that. If you say, I was in fear of death or serious bodily injury, they're going to be like, click. Okay, buddy.
All right.
But, the sentiment.
All right. Well, the answer to that in 2 sentences or less is that you should definitely let the police officer know that you were the victim of a crime, the intended victim of a crime, and that this crime put your life in jeopardy. Those are the 2 things you absolutely should say.
In your own words that sound natural.
Yes. Anything else that you say, and this is going to be really iffy, is you have to make with almost absolute certainty that it cannot be disputed by the physical evidence, an eyewitness, a surveillance video, or anything else that the prosecutors may dig up to say, look at this.
Yeah.
This is completely against what he said happened.
Right. Which is why keep it short and sweet till you've spoken to an attorney. And then, maybe you keep it short and sweet until you actually sit up on that stand at trial. We don't know. We look at the facts. All right. Last one. Pretty short one, too. This is at Wolf in Raven. Oh, and I'm sorry, I didn't shout out at Faith and Freedom 76. Wanted to know about the self-defense statement. This is at Wolf in Raven. Can I put a stock on a Mossberg Shockwave?
Ooh. Yeah, we wouldn't want to do that unless you have already decided that you have sent or going to send in your NFA Form 1 to expressly tell them that you are intending on converting a firearm, the Shockwave, into basically an AOW.
AOW. So it is not a shotgun. It is not a short barrel shotgun. It is expressly a firearm under the law, which means if you mess around with it and you turn it into something that's meant to be fired with 2 hands, right?
Fired from the shoulder.
Then it does not become a short barrel shotgun, right?
It's an AOW.
Becomes an AOW.
Right. But as a practical matter, the police officer who sees it laying in your backseat is immediately going to assume that it is, in fact, a short barrel shotgun. He will arrest you for it. You may or may not be prosecuted for it by the DA's office. If the DA determines that for some reason it doesn't meet their definition of a prohibited weapon, they will immediately contact the Department of Justice in their district to say, hey, we caught a guy with a gun that we don't think is legal. Would you want to prosecute this guy instead of us?
And they may or may not, because if it is an unregistered AOW, it sure is prosecutable. So watch out. Keep your bird's head grip. So, is that it?
That's it.
That's it. We hope you enjoyed this discussion. As always, if you would like your question answered, ask your questions on this thread. This is where we mine them. And what else does Richard say? Subscribe, like, the anti-2A algorithm. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Bells. Until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.